Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. I was just pogging at the merch that Chili Pepper has on. Don't you want to wear it too?
This video is a part 3. Make sure to watch parts 1 and 2 first.
I did.
From August 25th
It's on my
to
YouTube
October
channel.
26, 2013, Pancakes 2012 completely reinvented the A-Button Challenge almost entirely by himself. His unprecedented dedication and endless creativity, further enabled by a deep knowledge of the game and its infinite quirks, allowed him to come up with ideas and strategies far more advanced than anything that had been done before. Such stellar work was bound to be noticed. And sure enough, it was noticed by pretty much the entire speedrunning community at the time. Some people were interested in more than just watching. From this point on, Pancakes was no longer alone.
Let's go.
As soon as he completed his pass through every star in the game, Pancakes moved on to other challenges, such as no buttons allowed and no joystick allowed, where
No
the only
buttons
easy movement
allowed?
option is punching and jumping to slowly inch forward. The A-Button Challenge project cooled down a bit since there was little incentive to go back to it unless something new had been discovered. He didn't revisit the challenge until late March 2014 when he found that enemy luring strategies, which had been used to some extent before, had more potential than he had given them credit for. In Hazy Maze Cave, swoopers fly on a perfectly horizontal plane after their initial takeoff. He used that to his advantage by luring a swooper all the way to the slope, which raised it enough that he could bounce on it and reach the sledge to an amazing emergency exit, cutting one A press in the process.
That is so
the same
smart.
could be done for navigating the toxic maze, which is just the other alcove to the right, but that one was a bit more involved. Because there's no mole here, he instead had to align 3 swoopers at 3 increasing heights, all set up by luring them to various slopes so he could reach the higher ledge. This posed a very interesting logistical issue. Pancakes used his buddy, pen and paper, to solve and illustrate the puzzle. Enemy luring could also be applied with booze. While he did use a bookend bounce to reach this red coin before, the other red coin in this room still required an A press. But with clever manipulation, Pancakes got booze to line up under it and bounced on them to reach the coin.
Wow.
However, because he needed kicks to get a bit of starting height which require A to be held, he was only able to get Big Boost Hound's red coins from 2 down to 1.5 A presses. But remember, because full game runs round down half A presses, this was still good to lower the total A press count to 113. In the meantime, Pancakes also made a brand new glitch discovery: transport cloning. Objects that can move around, like Goombas and Bob-ombs, have collision detection amongst themselves. We've already seen how this can lead to strange behavior while holding a Bob-omb. The function that handles the result of these collisions is the key to understand transport cloning. 2 Goombas run into each other. Their respective positions cause their hitboxes to overlap, so the game attempts to reposition them. First, it finds the relative distance between them. Then, it finds the midpoint on this line, and finally, it moves each Goomba along the line from that point by their radius, so their hitboxes end up tangential to each other.
Okay.
In the more generic case of 2 objects with different radii, the line is divided with the same ratio as the radii of the objects. When the 2 objects are repositioned, their hitboxes will always be tangential at that point along the line. While such a scenario is technically possible, by far the most common case involves 2 Goombas, so they're placed at the exact halfway point between their original positions. The transport cloning glitch happens when the Goomba clone is released while the original is currently colliding with another Goomba. The key reason why it happens is that the Goomba is warped to the hope after the collision is detected but before the collision handling function is run. When the function finds the relative distance between them, what should be a small distance ends up being arbitrarily large. After that, the game finds the midpoint and places each Goomba 1 radius away in each direction, so the result is that both Goombas are warped to the point halfway between their original positions and the hope. Another important detail is that this repositioning is only done along the horizontal plane. The vertical position is completely unaffected. So if the hope is at a different vertical position, both Goombas will end up halfway to the hope in the X and Z coordinates, but while the Goomba clone ends up at the hope's Y coordinate, the other Goomba remains at its original Y position. This glitch allowed for 2 major breakthroughs in cloning capabilities. It was now possible, albeit very restrictive and convoluted, to release a clone at a location otherwise inaccessible without the situational hat-in-hand glitch. Although because Mario needs to be close enough to the Goomba trio for them to be loaded in the first place, there would be very few situations where transport cloning actually enabled new clone locations. The most valuable benefit was the ability to release the clone just far enough away from Mario that he doesn't immediately bump into it. Pan and Quick figured that this new technique would prove useful in Bowser in the Sky. Despite Panon's hard work, that stage was still sitting at 10 A presses.
10?
First, he found that luring a Goomba to the edge of this bridge barely allowed him to skip past that gap without using A.
Ooh.
Next, he found a use for transport cloning. He released a clone here while these two Goombas over there were running into each other. This warped both Goombas halfway to Mario, with the clone partly in the ground because of Mario's lower position. Afterwards, he used the fact that Goomba clones do still have collisions with other Goombas. He guided a Goomba to push the clone all the way to the other side where Mario could bounce on it after getting the final red coin, saving an A press.
Wow.
Panon was not done in this level. His next endeavor was to save the A press needed to jump into the pipe to the Bowser fight. The main issue here was that to bring a Goomba clone all the way to the pipe, he would need to be able to get there while holding an object. The closest Bob-omb to clone with is all the way down there, and because holding an object severely hinders Mario's movement options, that meant Panon needed many more clones to cross small gaps that would otherwise be trivial. So while he only needed a single Goomba clone at the pipe, the many gaps along the way basically acted as one big deconstructed Goomba bridge of length 7. At 127 Goombas, that's way too much to make this a viable strategy. And that's before even considering the fact that without the hand-in-hand glitch and remote release, there was no way he could release all of these clones without interacting with them. It seemed impossible. Until he found something new. As it turns out, on any given frame, Mario can only interact with a single object at a time. If Mario is colliding with more than one Goomba at the same time, whichever comes first in the processing order is the one that is handled, and the other collisions will be ignored. And here's the key part, when the clone's interaction status is broken and it becomes intangible, Mario still technically interacts with it when they collide, even if nothing happens. The processing order of a group of clones is the same as the order they were generated in. So if Mario releases a Goomba clone and bumps into it, he can then come back and release a new clone inside of the first clone's hitbox. Because Mario is touching the first clone, this is the interaction that is being handled. But because that clone is now in a broken state, nothing comes out of this interaction. Although he's also colliding with the second clone, this collision is ignored. So he can come back and bounce on the part of the second clone's hitbox that doesn't overlap with the first clone, and he has successfully released a usable clone without remote release nor transport cloning. There are two caveats. First, this method does require one clone to use as a sacrifice to place another clone. But once the blood tribute has been paid, older broken clones that were productive can allow Mario to release newer clones at no additional cost. Second, the interaction priority goes both ways. Mario can't bounce on a Goomba if he's busy interacting with another Goomba. He needs to release that second Goomba in such a way that there's a portion of its hitbox that's sticking out of the first Goomba's hitbox. This tiny section becomes the second Goomba's effective hitbox. So this new find was great to place clones.
It's really fun.
Locations, but what about the problem?
Critzy, I speedrun it. I recently just did a video of like a challenge I did with it. But man, this stuff is so interesting. Like how crazy it is.
Problem of having to clone over 100 Goombas when the game can only render about 40 at once. That one was solved thanks to transport cloning and clone pushing. Goombas needed for the fourth step of the bridge could be released remotely, then pushed into position by other Goombas. This got the use of the second and third steps of the bridge by half. Finally,
you walk simply speedrun all the time.
Yeah. And it could be bounced on without having to go and rebuild the rest of the Goomba bridge again, cutting the total number of clones in half once more. Panon's complex plan balanced convenience and minimizing the number of clones used. In total, 61 Goomba clones ended up being used for this A-press save, plus 2 more for the final red coin. This stretched the game to its very limit, and he ran into many crashes while tassing this stage, but with the right camera angles to minimize the amount of Goombas on screen at once, it was indeed possible. Finally, one last improvement was made in Bowser in the Sky.
The A button jumps. So the point of this challenge is so you don't jump. Yeah, the point. Yeah, the point of the challenge is that you just don't jump. And in like in the first video of this series, it was significantly less than 110. Like big improvements happened.
Time there was something different. It was not made by Pancakes, but by someone new. His name was Ganner D. Ganner D started watching Panen's videos even before the A button challenge, and he had grown fascinated by them. He
Nice.
messaged Pancakes through the YouTube inbox system, and after some back and forth, they started bouncing ideas for improving the A button challenge. One of those ideas Ganner D brought to the table was a very precise double jump kick to clear the first two platforms in a single A press instead of two. After a lot of testing helped by another guy by the name of WizDoodle, this A-press save was proven possible, bringing down Bowser in the Sky from 10 A-presses down to 6 over the course of a few weeks. Around that same time, another A-press was saved, this time in Jolly Roger Bay. Through the jet stream had always been fairly straightforward, one A-press to break the metal cap box and one A-press to jump into the star with the metal cap. But Panen found that the first one could be skipped thanks to an old technique that I haven't discussed yet, pause buffering. When Mario dives with B, as soon as he hits the ground, he can do a dive recover either with B or A. If he's on a steep enough slope, he actually hits the ground on the very next frame after he dives. As soon as he does though, he very quickly loses forward momentum. So each frame spent sliding after a dive takes out a big chunk of speed. In normal circumstances, you could dive with B on one frame and press A to recover on the next, but that's not a particularly alluring strategy here. Because both the dive and the dive recover have to be done with B, there has to be at least one frame where B is released.
You pause
them,
buffer, release B. Yeah, he's gonna pause buffer. Wait, click B and pause on the same frame. Unclick B, unpause and click B on the next frame. I see.
It's part of his speed. But while the game is paused, the physics engine doesn't advance, yet controller inputs are still being read.
My time, I only do 16 star right now. The fastest I've gotten is 1930. But all together, my best run, like if I all my gold splits, I have like a 1730. I don't do all the optimal strats, but I do most of the good ones.
So by pausing the game while B is released, Mario can dive on one frame, pause and release B, unpause and repress B, and recover on the next frame.
Yeah, I was right with this, yes.
This let him keep all of his forward speed, which was just enough to make it onto the metal cap box and save an A-press. In Hazy Maze Cave, for Metalhead Mario can move, Ganner D came up with another enemy lure, this time with the Scuttlebug to skip one of the gaps and save an A-press. Meanwhile though, Pancakes was working on something far more advanced. He theorized something quite insane. In TikTok Clock, what if you could skip the final A-press of time jumps on moving bars? This would be incredibly challenging, because while there are bob-ombs at the very bottom of the stage, there's nothing useful to clone with them. The star is encased in a solid cage with no features around it that could be used— wait, what? You can simply dive recover into it? Oops, well I guess that one slipped through the crack somehow.
That's
the
funny.
date is now May 2014. Panen's next target is Bowser in the Fire Sea. When getting the red coins, Mario has to climb the pole twice because this coin forces him to fall back down. The only way to get off the pole and onto the higher platform is to jump off of it. Or is it? In the first round trip, yes, definitely, there's no possible way around it. But after getting up once, the entire level is unlocked, which contains bob-ombs. Panen carried an unloaded bob-omb all the way back down here, where he could clone one of the lower Goombas.
Oh,
Using transport cloning, he was able to safely release a clone right next
that's
to the pole.
smart.
So that would allow him to drop off from the pole using Z and bounce to the platform, right? If only it were that simple. When Mario drops off from a pole, he has barely any horizontal momentum. So little, in fact, that one Goomba bounce isn't even enough to cross this minuscule distance. Using more clones didn't help either because he couldn't even place them low enough for it to work. He had to resort to something better, setting Mario on fire. Burning Mario actually has a very useful component to it. It makes him do a little hop forward. This is actually enough to reach the platform from the pole.
Wow.
The only problem is finding a way to burn Mario at the top of the pole. Luckily, fire spitters are there to save the day. These fire bars are made up of 15 individual flames, each taking up one object slot.
I didn't even know
When
that.
the fire comes out, all of these flames are loaded, then unloaded as they stop burning. If Mario's holding a vacant object slot when the flames come out, he can end up holding a flame clone. To release it, however, Pancakes couldn't use transport cloning because nothing can push fire, so he had to use the old knockback strategy by positioning a Goomba at the right spot. Finally, he also had to place more Goomba clones so that he could bounce from the elevator to this spot so that the flame would be placed high enough for this strategy to work.
It's crazy
down to get the red
how
coin,
much
he
this guy went
dismounted
through
the
for
pole
this
by getting
challenge.
burned, and he managed to get back up without
Wow.
any press. This meant the only A press left in this level was the one required to get off the pole the first time around. The next A press to be saved wasn't tied to any star in particular, it was the A press required to enter Cavern of the Metal Cap. This one was simple but quite precise to pull off. After getting Dory in the right spot, Mario can reach the platform with a run-up and a dive recover. Coincidentally, the very next day, Pancakes found another improvement, again in castle movement. This time, it was pounding the pillars to lower the water and access the Vanish Gap course. After catching Mips, Pancakes carried it all the way to the pillars. Here, he got off the pillar holding Mips but ground pounded. This instantly releases Mips, which in turn pushes Mario back onto the pillar. Rinse and repeat for the other pillar, and 2 more A presses had been saved.
That's so smart.
At the same time, Pancakes also found a way to get Secret of the Haunted Books from 2 down to only 1 A press. The A press to get to the second floor was still unavoidable, but the second one to jump into the star wasn't. Here though, it wasn't as simple as a dive recover. Instead, he had to dive recover onto the railing, which has a tiny slippery slope on top of it.
I actually
Immediately
could have
after
guessed that
sliding
one.
off, he clips back in and ground pounds, having just enough height
Yeah.
to touch the star. But how did he manage to clip back in like that? Well, the answer is complicated. Not complicated enough to make a fascinating 2-hour documentary about, oh, of course it is. So we're gonna simplify things for the time being. The railing's cross-section looks like this. This is the inside wall, the outside wall, and the slippery slope on top. Now, while hitboxes have multiple interesting properties, they extend laterally by 50 units on each side of the wall. In the case of a thin railing like this one, the hitboxes can stick out of the other side like this. Also, wall hitboxes only extend vertically up to 30 units below the top of the wall. Because the inside wall extends higher than the outside one, this section of inside wall hitbox sticks out and ends up pushing Mario back in from the other side. This is the spot Pancakes hit to make this A press save work. At the time, he wasn't fully aware of all of these mechanics and simply referred to it as glitching to the other side of the railing.
Glitching.
Another level that saw an improvement around this time is Rainbow Ride. The red coin star was already down to 2 A presses, one for each of the 2 trips to the maze. An obvious way to improve that would be to cut it down to a single trip to the maze that somehow gets all 8 red coins in one go. And that's what Pancakes did. He managed to do it by activating the elevator and taking it back up, and with this precise dive recover. But then, he found something bigger.
Wow.
The carpet trip to the top of the maze was essential, but the A press needed in it seemed very close to being skippable. He figured that if he could have just one small bounce, he could have the height needed to grab the sledge without an A press. And he solved it with the most advanced enemy luring strategy yet, the Lakitu lure. He led Lakitu far away while he was still low, then deactivated it until the last moment. Deactivation works differently than unloading does. When Mario is too far away, Lakitu is no longer rendered and updated, but it remains at the same position until Mario gets near it again. Because Lakitu takes a while to rise up to Mario's height, Pancakes was able to get it to fly up into him just in time to get enough height to grab the ledge.
Wow.
As it turns out, the Lakitu lure saved the final A press in the red coin star, but it also saved one of the 4 A presses for Big House in the Sky, which also shares this carpet ride. And just like that, the total A press count for all 120 stars was now under 100. But there was no time for celebration, there were more A presses to save. In Dire Dire Docks, the convoluted red coin star went from 3.5 to 2.5 when Pancakes found that he could activate the boxes switch and drop from the pole clone onto a box instead of jumping off. This one was actually more precise than it looks, again because Mario has almost zero horizontal momentum when he drops off from a pole. Following the theme of improving upon already complex stars, Pancakes then came up with an insane idea to improve the downtown stars of Wet Dry World. This was perhaps the most creative and bizarre looking strategy yet. Thanks to its 14-hour water level manipulation epic, the red coin star was already at 0 A presses, but Quick Race through downtown still required 1 A press to complete. That is until Pancakes somehow thought of raising the water level so much for so long that it would reach a value too large for the game to handle. The water level is stored as a 16-bit signed integer.
Yeah.
In other words, it can only be a whole number from -32,000 to +32,000. If it goes beyond 32,767, the water level quite literally overflows, so it wraps around to negative 32,000, essentially making the downtown area go from completely filled with water to completely dry instantly. And now the genius part. Because the water level bobs up and down, if the median is right around the overflow limit, the water level can
That's
switch
so
back and
cool.
forth between its maximum and minimum values, overflowing and underflowing every 2 seconds. Now that's a wet dry world. The result looks very weird. Mario swims for a bit, then starts falling, then becomes underwater again over and over. And this double state is exactly what Panin needed to bypass the need for an A-press in quick race through downtown.
That's so
Also,
cool.
although time is very much a secondary concern in this challenge, this solution saved about 3 hours for the red coin star. After this string of improvements, Pancakes took a bit of a break until mid-June. In the meantime though, he worked on a project dear to him since his very beginning with this game, a video on the 255 coin limit. Over the years, Panin had made dozens of videos about glitches in other Mario science, but this one was special. For the very first time, the whole world could hear his voice.
Hey guys, it's me, Pancakes 2012, bringing you Dutch pancakes since 2010.
This video didn't bring anything new for the A-button challenge specifically.
Yo, I agree,
although it
Kritzy.
did show the lengths he was ready to go
This
to
guy's
just
so
to
incredibly
rise the point
dedicated
he
and
got.
probably made no money
The
from
response
this.
from the community was so
Maybe he
positive
did
that
now
decided
from like
that from this point
monetization,
on,
but
glitch explanations and other science videos would become
that's just
commentated.
insane.
But because A-button challenge videos were mostly demonstrations of a strategy, he felt little incentive to provide additional commentary other than the video description and kept them in the same format as before. When Panin came back to the A-button challenge, he found an A-press save to go to Bowser in the Sky, which always required 2 A-presses to get up the steps. After exiting either Rainbow Ride or Wing Mario over the Rainbow, it could be done in
That's
only one with
sick.
a slight kick bounce and a dive grind double jump kick up 3 steps at once. How does that skateboard trick sounding move work? If you've played this game before, you've probably encountered this situation.
I hate this
This
so
happens
much.
because ground movement and air movement are fundamentally different. On the ground, Mario is pretty much always moving in the direction that he's facing. In the air, Mario's movement is defined by his speed and facing angle as well, but it is also influenced by the direction of the control stick. If Mario is facing slightly away from a ledge but the control stick is held towards a platform, he will move off of it while on the ground and back onto it once he's in the air. This results in Mario oscillating between being on and off the platform. It doesn't look like it here, but Mario is facing ever so slightly away from the platform. When he walks off, he enters a freefall state. In freefall, Mario can dive no matter his speed. He dives, but the joystick is held towards the step, so on the very next frame, he moves back onto the step. But now, because he's facing away, he slides back off the platform and into freefall again. Each time Mario dives, it adds a flat 15 to his speed, up to a maximum of 48,
Wow.
which is 50% more than running speed. So with 4 consecutive dives, he gets his speed up to 48. Then he enters freefall for a frame and lands again. When Mario lands from a freefall, he can immediately double jump. Because the vertical speed of a jump is influenced by the horizontal speed, and because a double jump has a higher vertical speed than a single jump, a 48 speed double jump kick gives him just enough height and distance to make it all the way up the stairs in a single A-press.
It's insane.
Next, Pancakes looked at the 100 coin star in Hazy Maze Cave. It took 1 A-press to ground pound the switch for blue coins, but with clever swooper bounces, he could reach 100 different coins with only that 1 A-press. That is until he found a way to ground pound the switch without having to jump.
Yeah, you
How
lead
could
the
he do that?
lead the bats,
Again,
right?
The answer was swoopers.
Yeah.
However, using swoopers to ground pound the blue switch meant that he no longer could use them to reach to navigating the toxic maze
Okay, I see the
alcove.
problem here.
Because of that, he missed out on too many coins to get 100 without an A-press. But thankfully, he could still combine it with the red coin star and get both of them for 1 A-press total instead of 1 for each. Next up was chip off Whomp's block. If
Yeah.
you remember, this star was left at 1 A-press last time because Pancakes couldn't find a way to get Mario to the star without jumping. Well, if he couldn't bring Mario to the star, why not bring the star to Mario? That's right, he could do it via cloning. Now it's easy to say just clone the star, but it's actually not that simple. Up until this point, the only way Panin managed to clone a star was by carrying objects through loading zones, but Dire Dire Ducks and Wet Dry World are the only 2 levels in the game that have a loading zone. The issue is that without the loading zone, stars are always loaded no matter how far Mario is from them, so they can't load into an object slot that he's currently holding. But here, because the star appears after the fight with King Whomp, it could theoretically load into Mario's hands if he was holding the correct vacant object slot right at that moment. As far as holding a vacant object slot goes, Panin knew it was possible to get a hold of an unloaded cork box by bringing it all the way up to the top and having King Womp break the box while grabbing it at the right time. There's a major problem with keeping that unloaded box though. To end the fight, Mario needs to ground pound King Womp, which is incompatible with holding an object. It was time for new technology to step in.
Hands-free holding.
This strategy was actually months in the making. Back in 2013, Pancakes had discovered hands-free holding, a state in which Mario is no longer in the action of holding an object, but he still has a held object with him. It can be triggered by a few specific actions, like diving into a downward slope or bonking into a ceiling. This is a volatile state with many restrictions.
See, you have to jump
In short,
though.
Mario's trying to get rid of the object, so he has to be kept constantly busy to keep him from dropping it.
Oh yeah.
This is usually done by jumping repeatedly, but that's not an option here. I'll leave figuring out why as an exercise for the viewer. Instead, Panin had
he's gonna use the grinding thing again. I bet, because that's gonna constantly keep him busy. I think that's what's gonna happen.
Hands-free holding glitch by bonking into the bottom of King Womp, which at this moment acts as a ceiling. Then he punches repeatedly to avoid dropping the unloaded box until he's in the right position to ground pound King Womp while holding a specific vacant slot which the star loads into. And this
I was wrong, but that was pretty cool.
To 0 A presses. Around the same time, Pancakes also posted a video about trying to clone blue coins. While he tried very hard to make it happen, he just couldn't get it to work.
It doesn't really work. I just get stuck in some sort of limbo world.
This goes to show that even though so many breakthroughs were made in that era, a lot of the research still ended up in a dead end with nothing useful gained. Also, Panin started posting some low-effort videos for testing ideas and documenting strategies over on a secondary channel, aptly named Pancakes 2012. I'm sure that's not going to be confusing. July 2015.
Clint Stevens skip.
It had been a good 2 weeks since Womp's Fortress, so it was time for more breakthroughs. The ascent up the rotating red coin platforms in Tick-Tock Clock, which was done in 0 A presses before, was now found to be possible in 0 A presses. But this time, while holding an unloaded bob-omb. Pancakes found that by entering the clock on the random setting and by manipulating the RNG, he was able to get all the way up these platforms safely while holding an unloaded object. This let him clone a bob-omb up here. The old strategy for roll into the cage was a side flip wall kick from down here to get up in 2 A presses. But with a bob-omb and a single A press, Panin was able to use the bloated bob-omb glitch to get up the cogs without using A again. The
That's so cool looking.
Holding, triggered here by being pushed off the platform while belly sliding and holding the bob-omb, and a lot of ground pounding, which during its animation temporarily disables collision checks with floors and most of its checks against walls. This is usually fine when Mario isn't being pushed around during the ground pound, but here it allows him to clip inside the cogs and pop up on top of them when the ground pound animation is over. This route involves some seriously crazy movement because Mario can't hold on to the bloated bob-omb for more than a few frames at once. Thanks to the bob-omb having 4 different bloated sizes, he could grab it at slightly different intervals and have it be smaller if he wanted to position Mario, and larger if he wanted a stronger push to cross large gaps. This allowed him to get all the way to the star and save an A press, but he still needed one more to jump into the star itself.
Wow.
Or did he? 5 days after posting this video, it was already outdated. It turns out that the bob-omb can still be useful even here. In its most bloated state, it displaces Mario by so much that it's possible to clip outside of the cage.
Yeah, that's bomb clip.
Onto this ramp. From there, he was able to clip back in, but high enough to grab
Oh
the star
my
without
gosh!
jumping into it. But this new find was bigger than that. Reaching this ramp had only been done in 2 A presses before. Therefore, this new bob-omb strategy saved an A press in 3 more Tick-Tock Clock stars. The next new technical development was for Metalhead Mario Can Move. 3 months prior, a scuttlebug had been used to save an A press and bring it down to 2. Well, it was time for that little bug to put in more work and take out the rest of the A presses. The first step was to make the scuttlebug jump out of the pit, but then Mario goes back out. As Mario leaves the room, the scuttlebug is deactivated but not unloaded. Again, this means that it remains where it is, but it's no longer being updated or drawn.
So it can be cloned because it's not loaded.
It will reappear in exactly the same spot.
Or it can be cloned because it is loaded.
The main development that made this improvement possible was found by Plush. It's similar to Shell Hyperspeed. When pressing C up while facing slightly downwards on a steep slope, Mario's trying to come to a stop, but the downward slope accelerates him straight ahead instead. Again, because the slope is so steep, his de facto speed is a small fraction of his real speed. Now when Mario enters water, he loses all of that speed. Except he actually doesn't.
Feel like you're spoiling yourself watching. No, it's not a spoiler.
Handled in two different ways.
Each of these videos have like insanely different strats in them. Like, it's crazy how like almost none of this correlates with the past two videos, other than cloning. But like then there's other strats completely in the previous ones.
And the sliding speed. The regular speed is a single value that is applied to Mario's current phase.
If you want to watch, there's also a fourth part out. I don't know if we're going to watch it today, but there is a fourth part out. The YouTube channel's name is Bismuth. I have a bad. I'll link it in chat. Here's the first. There's the channel that does it. And if you wanted to watch me react to it, I also I have a YouTube channel, and the first two reactions are also on it. So here's my channel for that.
Facing angle to move him. It's used in most scenarios: running, jumping, falling, taking damage, and many more. The sliding speed is fundamentally different. It's a vector with an X and a Z component. The resulting direction isn't necessarily Mario's facing angle. As its name suggests, the sliding speed is used while Mario is sliding, no matter where or how. Even though only one type of speed is used at a time, in most circumstances, the unused speed is always updated to reflect the one that's being used. When Mario is not sliding, the sliding speed vector is updated to reflect Mario's regular speed and angle, and when he is sliding, the regular speed is updated to reflect the amplitude.
You watched the guy already?
Vector. But there are situations where the regular speed is updated while the sliding speed isn't. As it turns out, swimming is one of them. While Mario is moving down the slope, his sliding speed increases and his normal speed follows. When he falls in the water, his normal speed drops back to 0, but
the sliding speed stays,
so it stays high. Now he can go back on the slope and immediately start sliding, which uses the sliding speed.
Oh my gosh.
That speed is still high,
and you just keep building up speed.
It goes even higher. Panin repeats this until the sliding speed goes all the way up to 496. At this point, Mario has so much speed that he can bypass the entire wall hitbox,
and then he'll hit
with it.
And then he'll hit the thing and be fast enough to. Oh my gosh.
Now, all he needs to do is wait for Dory to show up and use it to instantly start sliding out of the water, as well as to gain some precious height. And this is where the scuttlebutt.
Then it's gonna bounce. Oh my gosh. As soon as it's
reactivated, Mario goes butt sliding onto it with so much speed that one single bounce gets him all the way across to the star. And that is how Metalhead Mario Can Move was dropped to 0 A presses. While all of this was happening, another level was being worked on, the Eternal Bowser in the Sky. It had been left at 6 A presses.
All the bounce.
But Panin had been slowly chipping away at it with incremental improvements for 6 weeks from late June to August 3rd. This is everything he accomplished in that period. First, 1 A press was saved using Black Magic. What's going on here is actually not new. In his first run through the challenge, Panin had already abused this mechanic to save an A press in a higher elevator, perhaps without even realizing it. But how does that work? Simply because this thing is stupid. Have you ever run into weird wonkiness on one of these elevators before?
Yes.
Have you ever bumped into nothingness or been squished out of nowhere?
Yep.
Here's why. The axle rotates around its center, but its hitbox is incorrectly anchored.
That's so stupid.
And that's the reason behind all of this weird behavior, including both of these A-press saving moves. The second A-press save came in the middle of the level. This red coin always required an A-press to grab, but theoretically, Mario could also collect it by falling from above. Unfortunately, because getting off this pole also requires an A-press, it wasn't any better to do so. But Panin Koek figured out that using Goomba clones, it would be possible to dismount the pole without using A. Because the cloning had to be done
but then you have to get that speed somehow.
He did have to use A once to dismount it the first time. But then he could clone Goombas, drop down to the red coin, and climb back up using the Goomba clones to dismount the pole without using A again. After some testing, he quickly realized that because Mario's momentum is so low when dropping off from the pole, his best course of action was to take damage instead. He managed to do it by manipulating another Goomba to run into Mario to damage him, while pushing the clone under him so that Mario could bounce on it during the damage knockback. That worked, and so Bowser in the Sky was down to only 4 A presses, 2 at the start, 1 to get this
That's
red
crazy,
point, and 1
because
to get
just
off the pole the first time
right at the
around.
beginning of this video, it was already at 10, and 6 have been cut out already. That's nuts.
It also wouldn't last, thanks to a brand new development in Goomba engineering, the Goomba Ladder.
These freaking
This is
Goombas.
essentially like a Goomba bridge, except this time the bounces are mostly vertical instead. This let him bypass the pole entirely, at the cost of many, many clones. Long story short, this process took him 46 Goomba clones.
Ooh.
One interesting detail to consider is how Panin managed to clone from this Bob-omb in the first place. Vacant object slot manipulation is something that I've avoided talking about in detail because while it is a crucial element of anything involving cloning, one doesn't need to know all of its intricacies in detail to appreciate the incredible work that goes behind these cloning strategies. Here though, I wanted to give a glimpse of the kind of effort that sometimes has to be made just to
The
start
Goomba
cloning
elevator.
objects. The main sources for all of these clones are this Bob-omb and that Goomba trio. If you remember, on a flat surface like this, it's extremely difficult to clone with a Bob-omb. The only real option Pancakes had was to hold it off the edge as it blew up. Grabbing it this way will give Mario the vacant object slot number 9 because of all the smoke particles and the explosion happening at the same time. Now because a Goomba trio is made up of 3 Goombas, they will load into the first 3 vacant slots. This is the problem. To get a Goomba to show up in Mario's
You have to
hands,
get in a
Panin needs
ninth.
to lower that vacant object slot number from 9 to between 1 and 3, which means he has to load at least 9 temporary objects that would unload in a different order, giving him a new vacant slot number. The best he could do by kicking up dust was only up to 8 dust particles, so he paired it with collecting the Bob-omb's coin to add sparkles to the object count. So a temporary particle loaded into Mario's hands and then unloaded, which lowered his vacant slot number enough that he was able to clone a Goomba from there. But because the coin from a Bob-omb is a one-time thing, this method could not be reused. So he used that first Goomba clone to get easier future cloning. Bob-ombs immediately explode when they come in contact with other Bob-ombs, Goombas, or other enemies. With the Goomba clone just off the edge like this, when the Bob-omb runs off the edge, it falls on the Goomba and instantly explodes. Mario's then able to grab an unloaded Bob-omb in vacant slot 2 instead of 9. From there, cloning more Goombas is easy. Alright, that was pretty crazy, but there was one more major problem. Panin needed 46 clones to get past the pole here, 4 more clones to get the red coin here, 2 to get the final red coin, and 61 more clones to bounce into the pipe. The game was never going to handle this many Goomba clones at once. The solution for that was twofold. First, the disjointed axle hitbox let him skip one step of the upper Goomba bridge, and second, he found that he could bring a Bob-omb to the pipe and skip the last few steps of the Goomba bridge. This brought down the total amount of Goombas from 113 to 63. Nonetheless, because most of these Goombas were close together over there, the additional clones Panin needed to get this red coin would invariably crash the game. How he solved that seems absolutely insane, because it is absolutely insane. He got up the entire course without getting any red coins, entered the Bowser fight, and then he purposely fell off to his death. But why?
Oh my gosh, he gets rid of the clones.
This puts Mario back here at the very top of the stage, but it resets the entire level so that all the clones are now gone. From there, he was able to set up all the clones again. But this time, because he started from above, he only needed a few clones to get back up the pole once instead of using 46 to build a Goomba ladder to bypass it. And that made all the difference to enable this crazy A-press save to happen. But wait, there's more. 3 days later, Pancakes figured out a way to save the very last A-press past the beginning platforms. He did it by carrying Chuckya all the way there. In short, the two main challenges were getting past this gap and getting from holding Chuckya here to having it throw Mario into the coin without killing it in the process. Both of these were solved by dive grinding. Basically, that gives Mario enough speed in a short enough time that he has time to catch up to Chuckya and get caught before it lands, similarly to what he had done in Wet Dry World before. And with that improvement, what was once a 13 A-press stage was now down to only 2, both at the very beginning.
That is crazy.
After this crazy adventure, Pancakes' ideas dried up a bit. College had started again and he stepped away from the A-button challenge for a while. But in the meantime, someone posted a very bold claim on the Castle Movement A-presses video. I figured out how to go to Hazy Maze Cave without pressing the A button once. Naturally, Panin was skeptical. What are the chances that some random YouTube commenter had genuinely found a way to improve upon one of the most basic
forgot you had to do that
entire challenge? After all, he'd been getting dozens of these empty claims for well over a year now. Well, obviously, if I'm talking about it, you already know the answer, and Pan and Quick would soon find out as well. The probability is 0, because this is no random YouTube commenter, this is Tyler Keeney, the great mind behind the discovery of parallel universes.